Now, members of Parliament have raised concerns about SASSA's new grant verification process. The Portfolio Committee on Social Development says it wants to address the conditions imposed by National Treasury on SASSA's 2025-2026 budget. Now, the chairperson of the committee, Bridget Masango, says that the National Treasury has attached strict new conditions to the allocation of funds to SASSA. Masango says that these include quarterly reporting on suspended, cancelled or reviewed grants, income verification, including database cross-checks with the South African Revenue Service, NSFAS, the UIF, as well as Home Affairs, and also a biometric authentication for beneficiaries flagged as suspicious. The Department of Social Development, which oversees SASSA, has been allocated 285 billion rand for social grants in the 2025-2026 financial year. Now, the Portfolio Committee on Social Development Chairperson Bridget Masango joins us now for a conversation on this matter. Ms. Masango, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for having me. Good morning to you and your viewers.
Let's just start by bringing everybody up to speed regarding the conditions that Treasury have imposed on SASSA for the 2025-2026 budget.
Yes, these conditions were presented to us by the department and SASSA as conditions that they have been given by the National Treasury in line with the budget. They were linked to the budget to say if these conditions are not met, as you outlined them in your intro, they might even withhold the grants from SASSA. And that's when we started panicking. So as you say, the conditions include the quarterly reporting, the ensuring that beneficiaries are verified, and that the fact that also these verifications must be done in stages. But what has happened is that now what we see and what we hear from the beneficiaries themselves is that these verification, the system that verifies them, is, while it's allowed and noted and welcome, it's actually delaying them from getting the grants. So that is when we started then getting concerned about these verifications, because we appreciate that they are there to make sure that fraud doesn't happen and to make sure that there is no corruption in the application and payment of grants. But if the verifications are going to happen at the expense of the very people that the budget that you've just mentioned is meant to alleviate poverty from, then it's defeating the object. And that's when the Portfolio Committee on Social Development then said, no, let's dig in, let's dig more into these verifications. And we are in a process of inviting National Treasury to come before the Portfolio Committee to say to us, to tell us, how these stringent and strict unachievable verifications or conditions are meant to achieve, other than combating fraud, which we all agree must be combated as much as possible.
Ms. Masango, when you say that these conditions are unachievable, why do you say that, given that some of those conditions outlined are things that SASSA are already doing?
They are already doing them, but we are saying the implementation of the conditions, because before they report, they would have implemented the steps, and they would have verified people's income. They would have verified ID holders if they are the same ID, if they are the same people. Because of ID theft that is going on, they would have called people to come to their offices to verify in person that they are the same people. That is where I'm saying they are unachievable. Because an older person is told to go to SASSA offices so that they can verify themselves. And when they get there, there are not enough people to assist the people that come there. They end up in long queues. They end up to go back home and only to return the following day, having spent the money that they do not have. So that is why I'm saying they are unachievable to a great extent, because the queues of SASSA are well documented in this country, and the effect that has had on the already poor and vulnerable people. So we are saying, let's balance the ensuring that fraud does not happen with ensuring that people are not kept away from the grants they depend on for their very livelihoods. So that is where the unachievable comes in. I am not saying that they are not being done. I am saying they are not being done effectively to help the people still get their grants, but also be verified.
So it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it, Ms. Masango? Because you cannot continue with the sort of fraud that we are seeing at SASSA, and at the same time, as you say, one equally doesn't want to further disadvantage the most vulnerable in our society. So where does the solution lie? Because I'm just looking, just a cursory search on fraud cases at SASSA. 11 accused of defrauding SASSA of 260 million rand. That is an ongoing case. It's current. These people appeared 2 weeks ago. Then you have, a few others, witnesses threatened in fraud cases. All sorts of stories around fraud. We know of the 2 Stellenbosch University students who actually managed to very easily penetrate the system, and they were actually able to show how much or how easy it was to perpetrate fraud on the system. So Treasury, one would imagine then, are well within their rights to say, you've got to tighten up these controls. And I hear what you are saying, but then in terms of SASSA's response to this, what are they saying to you? What are they going to do in order to get to the bottom of this?
Okay, SASSA has presented to us the many, if you like, systems that they are putting in place. For example, they are saying that they will open more kiosks, if you like, where people can help. They can help themselves to do verifications. They are having mobile units that will go to rural and remote areas to help people where they are, instead of them having to spend money to go to SASSA offices that are far from them. They are also saying that they are going to make sure that people that are not able to reach their offices, there will be outreach programs that will go to those areas. All we are saying is that must happen, and we commend it, and it has been done, but the number of messages that are coming to us from beneficiaries themselves, from the civil society that represent communities, are concerning, in that they are seeming to outweigh the effectiveness of the systems that they are putting and they have been putting in place to meet the conditions. And that is where we are saying there has to be a balance, and we have to be appraised of the feasibility of this whole process, because we are the first ones who have also gone to SASSA and say this corruption has to end, this fraud has to end, and SASSA has. Working with the law enforcement agencies, as you have you cited a few occasions, has been arresting, helping in the arrest of internal people that are working with, obviously, outside people to defraud the agency, and we commend that. I even said that yesterday, that we commend this, because it's actually showing that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, but during the tunnel, along the tunnel, we cannot allow a situation where people are with their grants are withheld from them in the process of combating fraud and corruption. So you are right. It's a very, very tricky catch-22 situation, but we are obviously standing on the side of the beneficiaries that it must be done. It has to be done. Let's work on the implementation.
Which is perfectly fine, Ms. Masango, but what is the Portfolio Committee asking of SASSA in order to make sure that they actually arrest the scourge of corruption? In terms of digitization, for example, because you mentioned the biometric test that Treasury was asking for, but in terms of digitization of their processes at SASSA, has that been discussed?
Yes.
Have any timelines been set
Yes.
in place for that to be achieved? Because it comes down to then the practical implementation of some of the solutions that needs to happen, and it needs to happen forthwith.
Yes, most definitely. You know, this before even the Stellenbosch students, we were on SASSA's case about the using of biometrics, especially for the employees. To say, because these cases of fraud were committed and nobody would be taking responsibility because you cannot trace where the transaction started, at whose station, at whose on whose laptop or computer it started. And there was a time when SASSA would come to us and say, even in previous administrations, that they would come and say, we are talking to unions because unions are saying that it's not fair or the processes have not been followed for this biometric system to be used. So we welcomed when we heard that those discussions have come to an end and biometrics are now implemented for the staff or employees of SASSA, and then they will be extended to the actual beneficiaries, because things can happen. Things can fall between the cracks from internally, but also externally. When we hear things like where people, their babies or children that are ghost children, but they are receiving monies. So it has to happen both internally and externally. And we are encouraged by that. And we're saying, continue to strengthen this implementation, because for as long as the implementation is not strengthened, for as long as the internal systems are not strengthened and are not robust enough, we will continue to have the fraud on the one side and the suffering on the other side. So in the middle of this, let us strengthen the implementation of the systems so that we can meet the conditions so that people can get their money.
Well, we have to leave it there for today, but Ms. Masango, hopefully we'll be able to chat about this at a later stage, to look at things like a full systems audit for SASSA and the likes. But thank you so much for your time this morning. Bridget Masango, the Portfolio Committee on Social Development Chairperson, speaking to us about their concerns over the new grant verification process and, of course, the stringent condition placed on the SASSA grants and a budget allocated for the 2026 financial year by Treasury.